Hey, it's good to see you. I'm glad you're here. Pull up a chair. This is Wonder and Wander. Before we get into tonight, let's just take a breath and check in. We've been in some deep waters these past few episodes, and tonight we're going a little deeper. So I want to start by asking, how are you sitting with all these things right now? Let me ask you something before we go into tonight's topic. Is there something you believe, or perhaps used to believe, that's felt a little less solid lately? Something that used to give you footing that doesn't quite feel the same? Yeah. I get that. All right, hold on to that. We're going to spend some time with that topic tonight. I want to start with something that took me a long time to be able to name. Several years ago, I started noticing some things I'd believed for most of my life. Things that I'd never really questioned were starting to feel different. Not wrong necessarily, just not quite fitting the way they used to. Like a coat you've worn for years that suddenly doesn't sit right anymore on your shoulders. You're not really sure when it changed, it just did. And I remember that feeling being equal parts fascinating and frightening. Fascinating because something in me recognized it as real. Frightening because I didn't know where this was going to lead. There's a moment in a man's life when something he believed for a long time no longer fits the way it used to. Maybe it's something you were taught growing up. In your home, your church, your community. Maybe it's something about God, about what it means to be a man, about success or power, or what makes life worth living. Maybe it's a story you told yourself about who you are, and lately, you're not so sure it's true. The shift usually starts quietly. It's not a loud thunderclap. It's more like a slow leak. A question you can't stop thinking about. A nagging sense that something isn't lining up anymore. You might try to push it down, explain it away, tell yourself you're just going through a phase or overthinking things. But it keeps coming back. Because it's real. And it deserves to be taken seriously. That kind of shift can feel scary. And if you're in a community where questions aren't welcomed, where doubt is treated as weakness or disloyalty, it can also feel deeply isolating. Like you're the only one. Like something is wrong with you for asking, for having questions and doubts, for seeking to understand. I want to say clearly that nothing is wrong with you. Questions are how we grow. Curiosity is what we strive for. So let me ask you something. And I want you to go to the honest answer, not the safe one here. What's a belief you've started to question in your own life? It's okay to take your time on this one. It can be tough. Whatever just came up for you, that's not a crisis. That's the beginning of something. And I want you to know, there's no judgment here. Only curiosity. Here's something I don't think we talk about enough. Changing your beliefs, it costs something. It's not just an intellectual exercise. It touches the people around you. It can shift how you fit, or don't fit, in the communities that you've belonged to for years. And that loss is real. It deserves to be grieved, not just managed. When our beliefs change, it can feel like we're losing part of ourselves. Personally, giving up my belief system felt like losing my family, my ancestry, who I thought I'd always be. We grieved the certainty that we once had, that clarity, the sense of knowing exactly where you stood and why. We might fear what comes next, or worry about disappointing people we love. That fear of disappointment is a real one, especially for men who've built their sense of belonging around a shared set of beliefs. When those beliefs start to shift, there's a quiet terror underneath all of it. What if the people I love can't follow me here? What if I end up alone on the other side of this? I've sat with men in this exact place. The question isn't just, what do I believe now? The question becomes, will there still be people for me when I figure this all out? And I won't minimize how real that is. Some relationships change when we change. Some communities do create distance. But I've also seen the other side. Men who did the hard work of thinking for themselves and found that the relationships worth keeping, they actually deepened. They also found new companions on similar journeys as well, something many don't really expect. Growth almost always asks something of us. It asks us to release old stories, old identities, old rules about who we're supposed to be. And that's genuinely hard, especially when those stories were handed to us by people we loved. So let me ask you something. What have you had to let go of in order to grow? Yeah, that's important. That letting go isn't a weakness. It's one of those quieter forms of courage. There's a kind of loneliness that comes with this territory. It's the loneliness of being in a room full of people who all seem to share a certainty that you no longer have, where everyone else seems to know what they believe, and you're sitting there quietly wondering if you ever really did. It's the loneliness of not being able to say out loud what you're actually thinking, because you're not sure how it would land, because the cost might be too high. I've been in that space, and I know how heavy it can feel to carry questions that you don't feel safe asking out loud. Changing your beliefs can be lonely. Sometimes it creates distance between you and the people you once walked closely with. Sometimes it means standing in the middle of uncertainty, not quite belonging to the old place, and still not sure where the new place actually is. that in-between space is disorienting. And most men don't have the language for it, let alone the people to walk through it with. So they all seem to go quiet. They keep it on the inside. They pretend the questions aren't even there. And that isolation, it just compounds. And yet, as hard as that space is, it's also the beginning of something important. It's the beginning of integrity, of becoming your own man, of choosing truth over comfort, even when comfort was easier. I do want to be careful here because I'm not saying that questioning everything is always the right move, or that certainty is always a sign of immaturity. Some things deserve to be held firmly. Some convictions are worth the cost of standing in them. But the beliefs worth keeping are the ones that you've actually examined, not inherited on autopilot, but chosen. Eyes open, questions asked, cost counted. That's a different kind of conviction, and it carries a different kind of weight. So let me ask you this. Where do you feel caught between who you were and who you're becoming? Let yourself actually sit in that tension. Don't try to resolve it just yet. Because that tension that you feel, it's not confusion. That's the sound of life expanding, of you growing into who you're meant to be. I want to close tonight with something that I genuinely believe. The men I've seen do this work, the work of actually examining what they believe and why, they're some of the most grounded people that I know. Not because they have all the answers. In fact, most of them will tell you that they have more questions now than when they started. But there's a settledness to them that's different from certainty. It's a settledness of a man who knows himself, who's done the hard work of sitting with his own doubts and not running from them. That's not a man without conviction. That's a man whose convictions actually belong to him. You don't have to have all the answers tonight. You don't have to rush towards a new certainty just to feel stable again. You only have to stay honest with yourself, with the questions, with the road that you're actually on. And if you're in a season where the ground feels less solid than it used to, I want to say this to you directly. That doesn't mean that you're falling apart. It means you're finally starting to build something real. Something that belongs to you. That can hold weight. That won't crumble the first time someone asks a hard question. So let me ask you one last question before we close. What's one belief you want to explore more deeply? Go ahead and let whatever came up be what it is. That's the road opening, and you don't have to walk it alone. All right, well, the fire's burning low. Carry what you need, leave what you don't. You don't have to have it all figured out. None of us do. myself included. It's been good to be with you. Let's do it again soon, alright? I'll see you next time. Safe travels. That's all for today. Wonder and Wander is written and hosted by me, Mat Wuebben. Original music composed and performed by Calvin Armerding. If this episode meant something to you, think of one man who needs to hear it, and send it to him. And if you haven't yet, leaving a rating on Apple Podcasts helps more men find their way to the fire. New episodes every Wednesday. Wander boldly, wander freely.